Hey, this is Heather with Especially Paper. Today I'm going to show you step by step how to make a paper sunflower. The template for cutting machines is available at especiallypaper.com. It includes an SVG file to use with Cricut and other machines that accept SVG files, and it includes a DXF file if you're using the basic edition of the Silhouette Studio software. Because of the detailed center, this particular project is not suitable for hand cutting. Let's start with a quick overview of the supplies you'll need. You'll need craft glue, cardstock, I'm using 65 pound. You'll need floral wire for the stems. I'm using 18 gauge paper wrap floral wire. Needle nose pliers or jewelry pliers to create a loop at the end of the floral wire. Optional supplies include a hot glue gun and glue sticks, a bone folder, a quilling tool, and if you'd like to add color to your piece, you'll need your favorite coloring medium. I'm using alcohol markers, and I'll also show you a snippet of how I use pan pastel to add color to the petals. You'll need your cutting machine, and you'll also need the template from especiallypaper.com. I've already cut all the pieces on my Cricut maker machine, so let's get started. The first step is to roll and color the center. You'll need to cut 13 of the center strips seen here. If you'd like to scale the flower and make it larger, for the center, cut and roll more strips rather than making these strips larger. I'm going to use a quilling tool to get my roll started, but you could also wrap the end around a floral wire, a toothpick, some other small piece like that. But if you have a quilling tool, it is really useful to get these strips of paper started. As you roll, be sure to keep the strip tight, keep your roll tight, keep your roll even. So typically, after I've gotten the roll started, I will take it off of the quilling tool and hold it between my thumb and index finger to help keep the roll even as I make it larger. You don't need glue along the entire strip. Just add a bit of glue to the end of the strip. And then add a bit more glue to add your next strip. Position it directly following the strip before it, so no overlap, and then continue rolling. So I'm just adding a bit of glue to my very last strip. There we go. And if your roll isn't perfectly even, you can set it on the table and just kind of push it down, and that will help ensure that it's even. I'm going to use a bit of alcohol marker to add a tint of green to the center. So again, this is one of those completely optional steps. I think it adds a really nice touch to it, but totally optional. And if you'd like to do this, just take your alcohol marker and put more color in the center. So kind of lay your marker down and lift it up so you've got less color on the outer edge of this roll. The markers I'm using, if you're interested, is from a brand called Oahu. I actually have no idea how to say it. But I've gotten a couple sets of these markers and I really like them a lot. They're a less expensive alternative to the Copic markers, which are very nice markers. I have some of those as well, but they are pricey. So I'm using a lighter shade. It's a shade that almost matches the color of the paper, and just running it over the green, and that's helping it blend in a little bit. You can see what it looks like up close. So it kind of has the texture of the the center of a flower. So I actually create a lot of paper flower centers using this method. With different shapes of strips, it creates different textures. Use your finger to spread the layers of fringe apart. So just kind of pull it outward. And once I've got it started, I like to pick it up and actually fold the outer fringe down, all the way down as far as you can get it. That's going to start creating this mushroom type shape for the center. So you can see that the work we've done creates that rounded shape for the center. But we're actually going to add even more of a rounded shape to it. So I'm shaping this into a sphere shape, a half sphere over a quilling mold. So that green mold you see there, that's a quilling mold. And something to keep in mind is that we're going to be putting this in the center of those petals where that floral wire loop is used to attach the petals to the stem. So we need enough space underneath of this center to have it set over the floral wire. So you can also just do this with your thumb by pushing into the center of the roll. You could also shape it over any stiff ball. So a foam ball is something that I've used before. Anything like that will work as well. I'm also going to push into the center of my flower down just a little bit to create a depression in the middle. So if you look at some real flowers, a lot of them will often have that depression in the center. The sunflower is one of the flowers that has that particular shape. If you decide to do that, just make sure that when you're creating that dip in the middle, you don't push the paper down so far that it sticks out below the outer edge of the roll, because the outer edge is where we're going to add glue in order to attach it to the petals. Once you like your shape, go ahead and add glue to the bottom of the roll and use a piece of scrap paper to spread that glue until it's just a thin layer over the entire roll. Once you've completed that, set it aside to dry while we do the other pieces. The next step is to color and assemble the petals. There are 3 petal shapes that get layered together to create each flower. The numbers on the shapes are simply there to help you keep the pieces organized. It actually doesn't matter which order the petals are layered in. The aqua score lines that you see here are score lines for your cutting machine. So once you open the template, you'll need to change those aqua lines to the score operation in your software. If you prefer not to use the scoring tool with the machine, you can simply delete those lines or hide them, or there's also a file included with the templates marked No Score. If you choose not to use your machine scoring tool, you can score the petals by hand or just leave that step out altogether. I'm coloring my petals with alcohol markers. So I've got a nice, lovely shade of ivory cardstock here. And I'm laying down slightly darker yellow first. And I'm going back over that yellow with a lighter shade of yellow, just to help add another layer of color and also help blend in that darker shade a little bit. The color on this particular flower that I'm doing is actually mimicking a real life sunflower. It's called Cricut White Light. That's something that I grew in my garden last year. I plan to grow it again this year as well. Another coloring medium that I use quite a bit for paper flowers is pan pastels. It's a soft pastel, and I'm using it here over white cardstock and using a cosmetic sponge to apply it. So I'm adding color to the center, which is going to be covered by the roll that we created earlier. And I'm just using the sponge to pull the color out and soften it over the petals. Okay, and you'll see I was a little bit rough. I pulled off one of the petals. It's no big deal. I'm just gonna glue it on. That petal will be slightly shorter than it was originally, but it doesn't matter. So, if something happens, don't be afraid to fix your mistakes. Don't feel like that means you need to start over again. In the end, once this flower is finished, no one will ever know that I pulled that petal off. So in this close-up view, you can see the score lines, and I used my machine for this version. Now I need to glue those petal layers together. As I mentioned earlier, the order of the petals doesn't matter, but do align the center hole and align the triangle to get the petals positioned. Use a bone folder or another tool to add a gentle curve to the petals. You can also do this with closed scissor blades as another option. So I'm just applying pressure between the tool and my thumb to create that curve in the paper. Then fold the petals up. In your floral wire, add a small loop and then bend it to a 90-degree angle. Slide the floral wire through the center hole and use either craft glue or hot glue to adhere the wire to the petals. Obviously, the hot glue is going to dry a lot faster. That's why I used it here. I already had my hot glue gun heated up, so it was a quick solution. But craft glue works just fine too. You just need a little more dry time. And place your center right in the middle of the petals. The next step is to color and assemble the sepals and the leaves. You could also leave off the leaves and the sepals as well if you'd like to use this flower with a flat back. So you could leave off the floral wire stem if you want to use it for a shadow box or, position it flat on some project. You could use it that way as well. Since I used alcohol markers on the earlier pieces, I'm going to use those again for the leaves. But again, this is a place where I really like to use the pan pastels as well. And another note is the pan pastels and alcohol markers work really well together. So I wouldn't use an alcohol marker on top of the pan pastel, but I will often lay down some alcohol marker and then come back on the edges with just a little bit of pan pastel. So today for this project, I'm just simply using the straight up alcohol marker to add a little bit more color and dimension to this green cardstock. On the leaf, notice that as I add the alcohol marker, I'm kind of following the pattern of the veins you would typically see in a leaf. So I'm fanning the lines of the marker out from the base of the leaf. The marker I'm using, the olive green from Copic, is a little bit dry. So I'm actually going back over it with the another shade, another lighter shade of green, and that helps blend it all together. There is a score line in the leaf as well. So again, that could be done with the machine, done by hand, left out altogether if you'd like. And I'm adding color to the back of this piece as well, since it will be visible in the final project. You can use a bone folder or your closed scissor blades to add a little bit of curl to the leaf, the tips, the sides. Another option here too is if you'd like, you could draw more veins with an embossing tool. So I do that sometimes as well. I'm going to leave just a single score line in the middle. On the sepals, I'm adding a little bit more dimension by pushing down and creating a line in the center of each. They're not petals, but the little petal shapes. In the written instructions for this particular project, which come with the template, the instructions tell you to curve those petals lengthwise. So that's another option as well. It's a similar look, but I wanted to show this alternative way of adding a bit more shape to the sepals. Here I'm using the scraper from my Cricut machine. You could use the edge of a ruler, would also work. Layer these pieces together with the largest piece on the bottom and align the center hole and the triangle so that they're positioned correctly. I need just a little more glue. I was a little too light on the glue that time. And the top piece is the piece that in the video, it looks like it's just flat, but there's actually a small center X in the middle that gives you a place to push the floral wire through. So bend those sepals down a little bit, separate them. All right, now let's add it to the stem. So just push the stem right through that middle X, add a little bit of glue to the bottom of the petals, and push the sepals up until they are snug against the petals. To add the leaf, we're going to add a bit of glue and just line it against the floral wire. So determine where you'd like to place your leaf. And I'm shaping the stem around that floral wire just a little bit. Add a bit of glue and then position against the wire. I like to use some mini clothespins to help hold that in place until it's dry. If you do that, just make sure that your pen isn't actually touching any glue. And that's it. So that's the entire project. I promise you this is easier than it may look. I know the center looks like it would be really complicated, but actually super easy to do. And there you have it, a lovely paper sunflower. I hope you enjoyed following along with the tutorial and learned some new paper crafting techniques along the way.